Today's guest is Jim Derry, president of Fastener Distribution Company, Field. Jim has helped Field create 18% growth every year since 1990, has made it on the Inc. 5000 list for the past 7 years, and was voted the number 8 small company to work for by the Great Places to Work in 2015. So if you want the tips, tricks, and tools to creating sustainable growth for your company, or how to create an effective corporate culture, then stay tuned. You won't want to miss what Jim has to say.
Welcome to this edition of Peak Performers Podcast with your host, Thor Conklin. Thor will be sharing the necessary tools, strategies, and psychology you'll need to become a peak performer in any area of your life or business.
Jim, how long have you been with the company?
Since 1990, 27 years.
Okay. We'll just dive right into it.
So Dick Field, the founder of our company, started this business in 1976. He was a long-time fastener manufacturing guy here in Rockford, Illinois, which back really then was the fastener capital of the world. So fasteners are nuts and bolts and screws. I mean, they're everywhere. So he worked for a really large, well-known company and, kind of towards the end of his career, retired and created this small distribution company to really support the community in Rockford, Illinois. Well, he did that in 76. By 1990, he was ready to retire, wasn't particularly healthy, and just was time to be done. He built a business with 12 people, about $800,000 a year in revenue. And my brother and I kind of got this cockamamie idea to buy this business. And it was a dump. It was in a building that was just an absolute, it was a dump. I mean, there's just no other way to describe it. But we kind of had this vision that there could be something behind this. My brother at the time was in the fastener manufacturing business. He kind of knew the market. I was selling computers in Minnesota, newly married, new family. And I had a great job with a great company, but it was a Fortune 200 company, 35,000 people. And I just knew I wasn't cut out to work there and get a gold watch after 40 years of working for a giant company. And this little business, Field Fastener, represented a chance to get into a small company and also get a chance to get home. I lived in Minnesota. My Rockford, Illinois is home, born and raised, 6 brothers and sisters, my mom and dad. So it was a chance to get back home and kind of raise our family. My wife was from Illinois. So really a chance to get back home and get into a small business. So that was it. I mean, there wasn't anything about the fastener distribution space that said, geez, I want to sell nuts and bolts and screws. I can't wait to do that. I was a mechanical engineer in college. I knew enough about selling. I was a sales guy. And I figured, what the heck, I can figure this out. So I was 29 at the time and just really like, what the heck? It was took every penny I had, put it into buying this little company, and the rest is history, so to speak. But I think I was young enough to kind of want to do something and not smart enough to realize how much risk we were really taking. So we look back and laugh about it like, that worked out. But at the time, it was kind of a crazy thing to do in reality.
That story is very, typical where you just, look, I didn't know what I was doing. I needed a job. I have a good buddy of mine. He goes, I didn't know. He got into the auto parts business. He goes, I knew nothing about it. I just needed a job. So I decided one day just turn around and buy one.
This was similar in that my wife was a nurse, and we knew that if this thing went to heck, she could support our family, and we'd be okay. We weren't going to be on the food, and I knew I could get a job doing something else. But it was, really a chance to kind of get into a small business, and that was what I really wanted to do, was to get in out of corporate America into a small business. But what the business was really was really irrelevant because it really didn't matter.
And you'd have a lifetime supply of nuts and bolts. You never had to go buy any.
Exactly. Although sometimes it's easier to go to the hardware store than to come to the office and get in a forklift and go to get the part off the shelf that you need. But
I understand that all too well. I had a manufacturing company, and as I was going through some of the preliminary videos and stuff, I saw the warehouse. It just brought back all these memories of sitting there on the production line and going, okay, where's the parts for this? They're like, oh, they haven't come in yet. What do you mean they haven't come in yet? We have to get this product out, and it's got to be delivered today. Well, we don't have the part. So it's like, who ends up going to Home Depot, $8,000 on, these parts. I'm like, guys, we've got to manage this better. One of the things that you really seem to have dialed in is working with your customers and anticipating what they're going to need before they actually need it. What sort of game changer was that for your company? Because it sounded like you said, it was a dump to begin with. I'm sure there was no technology back in the 90s.
Absolutely. Well, really, that really is the essence of the business, is doing what we call vendor managed inventory systems. So that really what happens is, for our kind of product, nuts and bolts and screws, really the lowest cost stuff. Virtually most companies' business systems, they can't really plan and manage that. Your analogy earlier that you didn't have the parts you needed. Well, that's super common in our world, where customers, they do a great job at managing steel and motors and expensive stuff. But when it comes down to our parts, their systems of bills of material and forecasts and inventory accuracy are just they just don't work well. So our business was regularly involved in hot orders, just, hey, literally I'm on my way, I'm calling, I need to pick this stuff up, I got a disaster, I got a crisis. So we really sensed there's a need in the marketplace for us to kind of go on site, look at our customers' inventory, and then replenish it as it was needed. The best analogy is kind of the bread man at the grocery store. He drives up with a truck full of bread. He goes into the bread aisle. He sees the need for stuff. He takes it from his truck, puts it to the aisle, and there's bread in the bread aisle for customers all day long. That's really what we do for production components for our customers. But it came out of the recognition that a huge amount of our orders were emergencies and crises and line down kind of stuff. So we said, well, how do we get ahead of this thing? Because candidly, it's a challenge, a kind of a pain to process these emergency orders for our customers, right? Because they're on their way. So when we started doing these systems and created the demand, we could pack them and process them on a much more scheduled and much more routine basis. And there weren't as many, fire drills. So it really ended up being easier for us, fewer transactions, less hot orders, and the customers ended up having better service because of it. So it really came out of the realization that our customers were always running out of parts. And we said, and we had them, like, how do we get ahead of this? How do we take the inventory that's in our building, and how do we get it into our customers' bins before they actually call us and tell us they need it?
Now, I take it you ship around the country. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, from the Midwest down to through Texas and to the East Coast. We have facilities that we own and operate in Illinois, Texas, and a couple in Mexico. And then we have several what we call in-plant stores, where a large customer, let's say a huge manufacturing facility. We have let's say a 3 or 4 or 5,000 square foot crib in their manufacturing facility with our stuff in it and our systems and our people. So we've got these, we call them in-plant stores, are scattered all over the country.
Now, obviously, we all have competitors. In your space, one of the big competitors, Fastener, has locations kind of spread all over the place.
3,500 of them.
500. I mean,
3,500.
3,500. Now I'm a profitability consultant, so I look at that model and go, oh my God, look at that overhead. You didn't decide to go that route, so
right.
How do you compete against that? That model where they're just down the street.
Well, that is exactly the issue that we talk about. Is you can't have 3,500 stores across the country and say it's a low-cost model. It's kind of like, it's kind of like Kmart versus Amazon. I mean, do you want Kmart down the street, or do you want to get it from Amazon and have it just show up? Yeah. And that people get that. They understand that now, that a little store down the street isn't necessarily the most cost-effective way to do it. Plus, unless that little store down the street has the item that they need, who cares if there's a little store down the street? So we tend to push back and say, or pull back and go, it's all about the analysis of the data and understanding demand patterns and anticipating demand and getting out ahead of it. So if we have the stuff in our facility, even though, let's say we're a day or two away via UPS, they still may get it, they'll get it fast from us because we anticipate the demand, it'll be there before they need it. And if they have to run to a supplier down the street because they ran out of parts, the system's broken anyway. So that's kind of how that logic is kind of how we try to get there. Now, some people are still stuck with, hey, there's the guys down the street, so that's a better deal. And but So anyways, we get it done by looking at the data.
Yeah. And not an ideal customer for you.
Exactly.
As far as an ideal customer, is the ideal customer the guy that's running an organization that is disorganized, doesn't know what he needs, when he needs it, and you're just kind of filling those gaps, and you're kind of his intelligence behind the manufacturing process? Or is it the guy that really has it dialed in? I know you've got a degree in Six Sigma, you're a black belt. What's that ideal client? The one that is a mess that you can help, or the one that's really well organized?
Well, both of them, I guess, really are ideal. One is just easier than the other. And I think there's really two elements of the business. And the first that we kind of started with and grew up is these vendor-managed inventory systems. So that's what we've been talking about, having the parts in place when they need it. Now, the reality now, most legitimate manufacturing companies have some form of a replenishment system in place today. I mean, we did our first one 24 years ago, so it's pretty common. So now, really, the competitive issues that we bring to the table today are kind of the optimization of inventory. So they typically have a system. It may not be ideal, but the biggest point of differentiation for field today now is our ability to kind of look at how they fasten and join things together. We look at fastening, not the fastener. So now this is standardization, rationalizations of items, to use 3 screws versus 10 screws, to use a rivet or a clip versus a nut and a bolt. So it's kind of how do we drive cost out of the assembly process and drive the total cost down? Even though maybe the fastener is more expensive, the assembled cost is less. So the competitive model today now is way more oriented to the fastening component of how our customers build and assemble their products, and less about how well we can put parts in bins, because there's a lot of people that could do that. I mean, it's not, I say we can train monkeys to put parts in bins. That's important, but it's more important today in the landscape we compete in today that our technical capabilities in fastening and joining and driving costs down is typically more important than our ability to put parts into bins.
That makes sense. Now, you took over or joined the organization in 1990.
Yep.
Since then, you've created 18% growth, average growth. How'd you do that? That's phenomenal.
Charm and good looks primarily.
That's why I'm only at 16%. I knew there was something wrong.
No, I think there's
facial or what do I need? A haircut? It's not easy.
I would say there's two things that are completely tied together. One is with a value proposition that resonates with our customers. This issue of driving total cost down by putting replenishment systems in, so they have what they need, they never run out, they don't have too much, and that provides ongoing year-over-year cost reduction because of fastening and joining and creating the best way to assemble and join something. So that value proposition resonates, absolutely does. It's a huge market, right? I mean, it's $15 billion a year. So when you start at, $800,000 a year, you can grow, pretty substantially. So the value proposition is one. But the other, and really it's even more important, is the culture. We have a culture in the organization that people are empowered. They feel and think and act like an owner. They do whatever it takes to make our customers happy. They're committed to continuous improvement. There's a whole bunch of characteristics of our culture that really put people in a situation where they want to do great things for our customers, and they want to take care of our suppliers, and they want to work together as a team, and they want to support the community that we operate in. So the culture really is now the foundation of everything that we do. So I think it's value, to answer your question, value proposition that resonates and a culture that creates an environment where people want to be successful.
It's your people. I mean, we hear this over and over again, it's the people. On the flip side, I hear, people are difficult now to find. With the millennials coming into the workforce, it's harder and harder to find quality people. And though we have a culture, finding the right people seems to be difficult. So what's the secret? Is it finding the right people? Is it the training? Obviously, we have to have the culture set up, and they've got to fit into the culture. But how do you find the right people to fit your culture?
Well, from our perspective, We have a series of core values that, a lot of people do, but our human resources team does a nice job to make sure our potential candidates embrace our core values, right? And if they don't, it doesn't matter who, doesn't matter their skill set, doesn't matter their last name, they just don't get to work here if they're not a cultural fit. So I think our turnover rates and our kind of really the culture really ramped up when we got serious about making sure people were a cultural fit first. And once they are, then it's, the training and onboarding and those things are important. But I think the key thing is to assess what is the culture of the business and make sure that the people that you hire align with what you want the culture to be. We say it all goes back to being intentional about your culture. And I would say, let's pick 15 years, let's say. I never once talked about culture as an organization. People talk about feel. I never thought about culture. We stumbled into it early, in 1990. We just did what we thought was the right thing to do, right? I mean, you treat people the right way. You do what your parents taught you to do. That's all we did. I mean, work hard, play hard. We just did what we thought was the right thing to do. Somewhere along the process, we realized that there was something special about our culture, and then we started to kind of try to define it and get our arms around it. And now there's a whole bunch of things that we do to specifically teach and train our culture. And that is a huge part of our training and development and onboarding process, is to define exactly what it means to be a part of this organization. And there are specific behaviors that we teach and coach and train and reinforce that defines what our culture really is.
Now, I want to dive into this just a little bit because I had the opportunity to see one of your videos about the training, and you take up to 2 years to train people into a position. So, I don't want the audience to just go, the culture and the training. Dive down into the training a little bit, because 2 years is a serious commitment. And I think a lot of people think that training is, once a year we get together and they watch a video and then they're trained.
Yeah, and I think there are critical roles in the organization. The sales development program, the engineering development program, those where we're taking in relatively young, inexperienced people that embrace our culture, right? They get our core values, they embrace our culture, and then we teach them what it means. They really have to understand the entire business. So a lot of the training is similar, regardless of where you end up in a sales role and engineering role. You really have to understand the business. You spend time in, really the essence of the training program is spending time in what we call functional rotation. So you're going to spend time in receiving and shipping, and you're going to spend time doing these vendor managed inventory routes where we're going to customers and scanning bins. You're going to spend time in sourcing to understand what our suppliers do, what their capabilities are. You'll spend time in what we call account management, which is customer service. It's really to understand the business to a great level of detail, not just going, I talked to Sandy and Bobby about this thing and I spent a day here or a day here. It's weeks and months in some of these rotations to really understand the business. And I think that's the commitment to training. And in that process, you learn the business, but you learn the people. So now you're working arm in arm with the people in the distribution center and shipping and receiving and the VMI guys. So now you know them. It isn't just you've worked with them. So you really learn a lot about the business, but you learn about the culture, and we really understand then how we work as an organization, how things get done. And ultimately, you're in a better position to be successful as a sales guy or an engineer because you understand how our business operates to a great degree. So we are committed to these development programs. They vary in length based on your experience. Somebody right out of school could spend 2 years. The sales people are typically 2 years. But someone with some experience, they might spend 3 to 6 months, but they're still going to spend meaningful time in all the functional areas to really learn the business, learn the people, and that's when the culture becomes real, when you understand how we operate as a company and really what we do and how we create value to our customers. That's ultimately what it boils down to, right? We have to create value to our customers, and you got to really understand that to see how your role in the company fits into that value proposition creation to our customers.
Yeah, I remember, days sitting there underneath. We manufactured spa equipment that went into nail salons. And I remember going out in the field and doing installations myself and laying on a dirty salon floor, trying to, wedge myself up, trying to do the connections right between the electrical and the plumbing. And you really don't get an understanding of what your team has to go through until you actually get in there and get your hands.
Yeah. But then when you do that, you understand, when you see something while you're assembling, you're like, now wait a minute, if we did these things different, all of a sudden it would be way easier for us to assemble this thing in the field, and it really is no different to you guys making it, right? Because it doesn't matter, right? So that whole idea of understanding kind of the upstream and downstream, when I do this, I give it to somebody else, what do they do with it, kind of a thing? That's a big part of these functional rotations. So you get what each of the elements of the business are doing, and how your work ultimately can impact that in a positive way or be kind of a pain in the butt.
Talk to me a little bit about 2008, 9, and 10. Across the country, things were starting to get worse in 08, really got bad in 10. I was in the center of it and being in manufacturing. Your customers were going through a difficult time. How did you make it through that period?
It was tough, but I would say that it's the single best thing that ever happened to us as a company. One of the best things. I mean, in the nature of our business, when so much of our demand is based on what our customers need, right? We go out there today, scan a bin, order, and then we deliver it tomorrow. So the demand for our product from our customers changes instantly. As our customers' demand goes down, our incoming orders stop instantly. So that's what happened to us in 2008. I mean, it literally, the business, the volume fell off a cliff. So, we did really two things that are really important to us today. One is we embraced continuous improvement. We said, all right, we got to look at everything we're doing, and we got to find a better way to get this done. We got to take out costs. We got to get more efficient. So continuous improvement at that point was a matter of survival. And partly because we also looked around and said, hey, we've got people in this organization that are just not cutting it. They're not pulling their weight. And, when we sat down, we asked, people, the leaders at the time, to say, well, who could go? The list of people was exactly the same from everybody. It's like, so we looked at ourselves and how did we let this happen? I mean, and it was 10% of the people. We got 10% of the members of this company that are not carrying their weight. And we, as leaders, we let that happen. Yeah. And that was, that was terrible. I mean, it's my fault. In the role I had, I'm like that. So we did what we had to do. We had a 10% layoff. But then we told the rest of the organization, we're going to get through this thing, and we're going to get through it. We're going to get through it together. And we did a bunch of things around continuous improvement, and we did some things with freezing wages and not paying bonuses and stuff like that. But we got through it as an organization. And on the other side of that, we are a better company because we just got fat. We just did. We just got lazy. We let people be a part of the team that weren't pulling their weight. So that, we put, fixes around that. But now this energy around continuous improvement, that was exciting because we kind of had to force some of that. But once the organization kind of buys into it and sees what you can do, sees what little bits of continuous improvement look like when you add them together, it's like, wow, that's really different. And we saw that in every functional area, the guys in shipping, the guys in receiving, the VMI people, the accounting processes, the customer service people. Everybody was finding little ways to take 5 minutes here or 10 minutes here or reduce a step here. Well, that's part of the culture. So this conscious effort to keep getting better started as a kind of survival mode, but now it's become kind of a really important part of our culture, where we would say we're really proud of what we do and how we do it, but we know we can get better and our best days are yet to come. So it became a reaction defensive mode, and now kind of a part of the organization going forward, going, hey, we're going to get better. We'll find a better way. We'll think of new ways. And that really was spurred out of the recession back in 08 for us.
I'll never forget a mentor telling me one day, he said, how great of a leader do you think you are? I said, I don't know, maybe a 7.5 or an 8 at the time. And he said, let me ask you a question. He goes, is there anybody on your team that if they came in and resigned on Monday, you'd be relieved or actually even happy? I'm like, yeah. He goes, you're a lousy leader. Because you're not doing your job. Your job as the CEO is to make sure that you've got the right team. And if you're telling me that you're going to be excited about somebody quitting on Monday, you got to step up and you start making the hard choices. It's tough. Nobody wants to let people go. I mean, I think it's one of the toughest things we do as
no question about it. But the thing that really, and now we've had a couple of these moments where I can see this happening. We put our core values, and we built a new building and then this kind of this cool, great room, and it's a cool room. So we put our core values at big 6-inch letters on the wall, and one of them is teamwork. And then we had a discussion with our leaders going, all right, we got this guy. It doesn't matter what his name is. He works in the distribution center. Never missed a day work, never makes a mistake. He processes all the orders for our largest customer, Honeywell. And he doesn't give a crap about teamwork. He does his own thing, never does anything wrong, never makes a mistake. And we basically said, look, we got to do one of two things. We got to fire this guy, or we got to take that sign off the wall, because it's just, we're kidding ourselves to say teamwork is important. But we didn't have really at the time the guts to fire the guy because he was so good at what he did. So long story short, we ended up kind of systemizing everything he did so it didn't need the person. It was the system. So other people could process the orders because you didn't have to have all this tribal knowledge. Any reasonably trained guy could do the work. But then we said, all right, you got to go because you don't embrace teamwork. And we could let him go, and we weren't putting our largest customer at risk because of it. So I know it's kind of the same thing. If you say you have values and people don't embrace them, everybody in the place knows it. I mean, if I know it as the leader of the organization, the guys that he works with, heck yes, they know. They've known it for a year. So
one of my rules or standards in any of my organizations is stealing will not be permitted or tolerated at all. I don't care if it's $5,000 or $5. And to that point, we prosecute, to the fullest. I mean, it's almost an overreaction. But I want to make it very clear to the rest of the members that this is not tolerated. So if it happens, you're going to walk out in handcuffs.
Yeah. Well, we haven't had to go that far. Integrity is our first core value, and that's easy. When we look at situation, if you don't act with integrity, it's done. It's not. You don't get a second chance. It's over, right? If you lied about this, you cheated on that. It's just done, and so.
You got to be consistent. You've got to follow through with what you say the rules are. Otherwise, nobody wants to follow.
They're not rules then.
Yeah, exactly. Right. They're just suggestions.
Yeah. Then it's what Enron did, right? You looked at their core values and these are great. Well, then you've probably seen it, right? You think, well, these are Enrons. They didn't mean anything. So I guess it kind of goes back to the thing about culture. How do you make it real? And it's just not, it's culture. Man, you got to live it. It can't be just a bunch of BS. You got to live it and make the tough decisions. When people don't embrace what you think is important, you got to deal with it.
Yeah. So going back and looking back on your tenure, what are some of the things that you said, that was a really good decision? And then on the flip side, you said, boy, I wish I had that one to do over again.
There was a couple a couple of them where they were, again, relatively early on, where we're talking to a pretty high profile, actually the one, high profile aircraft engine manufacturer. So they've got the highest expectations, the highest quality standards you can imagine. And we are working out of this piece of crap, dumpy building not far. So we had this meeting, and this customer or potential customer talking about that we need this and we need that. We need a supplier to do these things and those things and all this stuff. And we just said, yep, we can do that. We can do that. Absolutely, we can do that. No problem. So we walked out of this meeting, my brother and I, we looked at each other and said, how are we going to do this? We haven't done any of this stuff. We've never even thought of this stuff. We just told them we could do all that. So the reality is we went back, listed all this stuff out with our team. This is what they want. We found a way. We found a way to make that happen. And that's one of our behaviors now, find a way. So you go into a situation and you listen to what the customer wants and say, I don't know how to do this. We've never done it before, but we're going to find a way. And it's almost always customer focused, but it has really served us well to say, look, we're going to understand what the situation is, bring it to the team, develop a plan, and then find a way. So that's one. And I think there's several examples of making that happen. The flip side, in our growth, we've had a couple of acquisitions, and the first one, this was in 2001. So this is, we talked about culture. Well, in 2001, I never thought about culture. I mean, it wasn't even top of mind. So we bought a small company. We're in Rockford, Illinois. It's about 60 miles west of Chicago. We bought a company in Chicago because we really wanted to be in that market. Great company. Owner's a great guy. He's still part of our team today. We just didn't realize how the culture of that company was so different than ours that we would never be able to integrate them. I mean, it was literally oil and water. And we just missed that. And we tried, people and training and processes and systems. And we could never get these two companies to kind of think and operate together. So we finally just said, heck with it. We're going to close that facility down to Chicago, move the materials 62 miles into ours. And really, that's the only way we made the integration happen, is that we just gave up on it. We just moved it into what we were doing in Rockford. So the point is, especially in acquisition, culture is more important than anything. I mean, it just is. I mean, if there's not a cultural alignment, it doesn't matter about anything else, because if you want to integrate them, it just never will happen.
Yeah. I always get a chuckle when I read that there's going to be a merger. The two firms are merging together, and there's going to be a blending of the two management teams together. I was like, there is no such thing as a merger. Someone's got to be in control, and someone has to have the culture to make it work. I want to end up on. We could talk for hours here. I want to end up on this. Whenever you have inventory, you've got to manage that inventory extremely well. You've got receivables, you've got payables to vendors, and sometimes entrepreneurs find themselves at the end of the year where they've made a profit. They go to look at the cash accounts and they go, I got no cash. How could I make such a big profit? And it's all sitting there on the shelves. It's all in inventory. And it's a very dangerous environment. You don't know what pain is until you have a nice net profit. You got no tax to pay, or no cash to pay the tax. Not a pretty scenario to be in.
I get that.
So how do you've got a lot of moving parts and quite frankly, a lot of small parts. How do you keep the whole thing going from receivables to payables to managing that and producing a profit at the end of the day?
Yeah, that's a particularly challenging issue in our business, right? Because if we step back and say, what are we doing for our customers? We're really managing their inventory. And we do that. Our customers essentially they have very little. They have what they have typically on the shelf or where they're consuming it. So they may have a couple of days or a couple of weeks worth of inventory, and we're going to have the balance of that. And the majority of this material is coming from Asia, and that has a 3 to 4, 5 month lead time at times. So you just start, you just do the math. You think about the math in your head going, the customer has none. We've got a 6 month lead time. The usage is volatile, right? So things jump up and down going, well, holy cow, how do you do that? Well, there's a fair amount of inventory in our system. And that is just a challenge that we have. And when we take on a new customer, when we get a new account, we have to have all that inventory in our facility up front before we start being their supplier, right? Because the first day we're the supplier, we have to have all this inventory. So the bottom line is that is a huge challenge for us. So we do several things. One is we work extremely hard to try to analyze our customers' consumption so we can optimize the inventory we have in our building and really in the supply chain. So now we're working closer with suppliers to have maybe the supplier inventory on consignment in our facility, or we're shipping direct from our supplier to our customers, so we kind of lean that inventory out. But the reality is you can't grow in this business at 18% a year and do that without support of a bank. I mean, we've had a great working relationship with our bank, and they've been supportive, and they've helped fund our growth, because there's just not enough profit in this business to grow at 18% a year and fund all the inventory and all the receivables. So we do everything we can to minimize that, but a bank debt and that's just a part of the business for us. So you try to find the best banking relationship, the best deal, the best terms, and but having a relationship with a bank has been an important part of our growth strategy.
Yeah, and you have to deal with Chinese New Year too. where the country just shuts down for 3 weeks.
Yeah. Well, it's tomorrow is the first day of tomb sweeping. So it's a 3-day holiday for tomb sweeping. So yeah, you get goofy stuff like that. But you got to fight the battles on payables and receivables and find that balance. I think, but for us though, is we don't play games with our suppliers. In our business and distribution, we pay our suppliers absolutely every time we said we will. And our customers sometimes are really big companies, and they do goofy stuff and they want extended payment terms, and that's really disheartening. But it's just kind of the nature of the business where they don't necessarily. Well, let me go back to your question. Who's an ideal customer? Somebody that pays their bills on time, and they don't feel like, since we're a supplier, we could just kick you around and not pay it because it's the end of the year, and they want to fluff up their balance sheet so that Wall Street thinks highly of them. So that's a challenge that we have in dealing with big giant companies that sometimes do things that really aren't really in this sense of a partnership with us as a supplier.
Yeah. So is there going to be an 8th year on the Inc. 5000?
Well, last year was a good year, and we're off to a great start in 2018. We had 2 record months, and the shipment months, and the first quarter was by far the largest shipping month we've ever had, and we think it'll be the most profitable quarter we've ever had. So we're off to a great start. Yeah. So it's nice to get the recognition. That's fine, but we do it for us, and we do it because that's how we're wired. It's nice when somebody else says, "Hey, attaboy," and give you a pat on the back, but we're doing it for ourselves.
Well, and it's an incredible group of business owners, entrepreneurs, business leaders within that community as well. Did you go out to Palm Springs?
I was not able to attend that event. Yeah. We did one a couple years ago. I can't remember which one it was, but it's flattering to be mentioned in that kind of company. We don't think of that. We're just these guys selling nuts and bolts and screws. Whatever. We don't know anything about this stuff. We're just doing what we think is the right thing to do. Try to take care of our customers, be nice to our suppliers, treat each other with respect. I mean, we're a pretty simple bunch of folks just trying to, do the right thing, I would say.
I remember when I was in New York for the first part of my career, and I remember having clients around the country, and particularly in the Southeast. You'd meet someone. It's like, yeah, we're just a bunch of good old boys from the Southeast. We're just, know how to compete. And then you look at their books, and it's like, whoa, it was that modest introduction. 2016 revenue, $62.5 million. You don't get there just by circumstance. You worked hard to get there. What's taking you there? I know one of your goals is to get to 100 million. I think I read that somewhere. Is there any major shifts that you need to take in order to get? Because sometimes what's gotten us here, the people have gotten us here, won't get us there.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I would say we started this journey to 100 million when we were about 22 million. So it was at our 20-year anniversary, and we kind of actually it was fun. We took the whole company to Vegas to celebrate 20 years in business, and actually my brother at the time, but then said, "Hey, we're going to want to go to be 100 million." I looked at him like, "You've been in Vegas for a couple of days. I mean, what have you been doing, man?" But so that kind of has become a filter for everything: people, processes, systems. And go, does it help us get there? Yes or no. If it does, fine. If it doesn't, so it's kind of an ongoing assessment of who we are, what we do, how we do it, and say, is this going to help get us there? So one major thing, really, we know we've got facilities in really Chicago and Dallas, let's say. We need a distribution center that we own and operate and manage in the Southeast and the Southwest. We need to have a bigger footprint so that we can be 2 days away from a bigger chunk of the country in our facility. Because right now that distance it makes it a little harder to compete in certain geographic markets. So that will be an important part, whether we do an acquisition, and we're looking in the Southeast and Southwest for an acquisition or kind of building a facility from scratch. That would be a big one. But really the value proposition culture, it's just doing more of those kinds of things. So there's nothing dramatic that we need to do different. We should be 85 million this year in revenue, and so now we're getting close. You can say, hey, we can get there, right? I mean, we got this far.
We got the momentum we'll get there on our own. I like it. Well, Jim, when you open up your facility in the Atlanta area, you'll have to give me an invite. I'll come for the ribbon cutting.
Is Atlanta home for you?
It is.
Oh yeah, we had a team of folks down there sizing it up because if we were to pick a spot today, it would be Atlanta. That's a huge market for us. For our kind of stuff, lots of people, building stuff. We've got a couple of customers that are not too far from Atlanta. So that is an area that we would absolutely look to kind of, replicate the systems and processes in a geographically remote area.
It's a great place to do business. It's reasonable, whether you buy land, or just set up a rented warehouse facility. I mean, as long as you're not in the perimeter of Atlanta, you can set up shop very easily.
Yeah. And it's great. You get this, go from Chicago to Atlanta. I mean, that's like a piece of cake.
And I would bring in all my containers through Savannah.
Yeah.
So then I just truck it in from Savannah same day. So
our logistics guy was saying that exact same thing. That's a good spot to be. So that's an area where it's this blend of trying to grow the business, but it's hard being that far away, and versus buying something versus kind of starting from scratch. So that's an area that we're put some additional focus on right now.
I think you'll figure it out.
Yeah, I think so too.
Jim, tell the audience how they can get in touch with you. I'm sure we've got some manufacturers and some people that could use your product and your services.
Yeah, really the best way is our website, www.fieldfastener.com. It provides a good overview of kind of what we do, the services that we offer. It's really a great way to get a better sense of the kinds of things that we provide our customers.
Jim, I really appreciate your insights today. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Enjoyed chatting with you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too.